Taking a deep breath in, and as you exhale, just let go of the day so far. And press down to your sits bones gently and just lengthen up through the spine. Imagining your vertebrae are like a stack of coins, sitting up nice and tall. Relaxing the face. You can have the eyes closed or a soft gaze down. Softening the shoulders. Relaxing the belly. Relaxing the hands. Take another deep breath in. And as you exhale, see if you can drop the shoulders down a little further away from the ears. Just noticing any tension or tightness in the body. And just sending a little message to relax. One more deep breath in, all the way up to the shoulder blades. And as you exhale, just feel the entire body relax. Give a ride. And notice the breath. Where is your breath? Where do you notice it? Perhaps you notice it entering the nostrils. Perhaps you notice the belly. Each inhalation, the diaphragm moves down, the belly expands outward. And each exhalation, the belly falls towards the back of the spine. And perhaps you notice the breath at the area of the chest. The chest expanding outward. Wherever you notice the breath, place your attention there. And normally as we go through our day, we don't notice our breath much, but notice what happens when we focus our attention on the breath. See if you can follow your breath all the way up towards the top of the in-breath and all the way down to the bottom of the out-breath. Just notice. As the body relaxes, the breath slows down, and so too the mind starts to relax. This is much like how we fall asleep every night. We let go. What about thoughts? Normally, we're surrounded by our thoughts. We're floating down a river of thoughts. Thoughts are bobbing up and down all around us. And here in meditation, here in meditation, we step out of that river. We gently climb up onto the bank. And we simply watch the thoughts go by. We do our best not to attach ourselves to these thoughts. We see them coming from the left. And we see them going over to the right from where we're sitting on the bank of that river. Few minutes. Enjoy the silence. Enjoy sitting, breathing. Nothing to do or undo. No place to go. And no one to be.
Welcome, everyone. Nice to have so many visitors here, especially during the rainy season. That's unusual, so it's a special treat tonight to have you all with us. We have been doing, if this is your first time, we've been doing a series on the 4 Brahmavaharas, which are one of the core teachings of the Buddha. And we are on week 4. So we're at the very end, and we're talking about balance, equanimity today. The first ones, first three that we've spent the last 3 weeks on are loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. And so we're now on the one that Ruthie often says is the odd guy out of the 4 Brahmavaharas. It just doesn't seem to have the same resonance as the others because it's probably foundational. And this is about equanimity. So Oramae is going to lead us. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, hi everybody. I think what I'll start with are the 4 immeasurables. So, well, first I want to acknowledge the teachers of the Dharma that have, and the conditions that have allowed me to be able to receive and hear the teachings, and then to actually put them into practice and use them is a whole other thing, right? It's like, and so I just want to bring to mind those people and acknowledge that these teachings come from like traditions that we're also able to utilize in the ways that make sense to us. And the 4 immeasurables are something that I want to offer to start with, because within that is all of these, these are the root of the teachings as far as in equanimity as well. So the invitation is, as we do the 4 immeasurables, I'm just going to invite you to notice like what comes up for you in each one, right? And we're not going to stay there too long, right? And I'm going to share them in English because it's important to be able to connect to them. So whatever your language is, but oftentimes we might know a mantra in Tibetan, but we don't know what it's saying. And it's like you're not connecting to what the teaching is about, right? So the essence of it is in what is being transferred and transmitted. And if English is not your first or second language, like mine is not, but hopefully we can all pick up on it and get it real quick, right? So just be comfortable and seated, and then the first one is, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. Just take a moment and in that saying, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. Second one, may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings, without exception, be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Third, may all beings never be separated from the supreme, I don't like that word, from the big joy that is beyond all suffering. And there is my I don't like, my preference, right? May all beings never be separated from the supreme joy that is beyond all suffering. And the last, may all beings rest in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and sorrow. May all beings rest in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and sorrow. So starting with those 4 immeasurables, and then just so for the equanimity, right? I'm curious, like, what do people feel like when we say equanimity? What that means to you? Anybody want to share?
Poise, balance.
For you?
Balance.
Balance,
Without judgment.
non-judgment.
Balance, poise.
I think of it oftentimes, it's the duality thing, right? We're often like, it's either this way or it's that way. And the way I understand is equanimity is kind of the middle path.
That's why it's called the middle road.
So there's like this middle path, right? So all of those things that we described, and when we talk about the equanimity, right? So sometimes we might think it means that we're always peaceful through a situation, or calm in a situation, right? And another way to feel into it is that we are able to stay like balanced, that middle path, where we're not being pulled and pushed in either direction when there's stuff happening around us, whether it's a good or bad, as we like to delineate things, right? As like, oh, you're so this, or you're, praise, then there's the 8 aspects of those dualities, right? So it's either praise or rejection, all of these different things that come down to it, all the ways in which that we might either attach to being praised, or feel terrible when we're being ignored, or, just lightly, or if something is happening in the world where we are getting pushed and pulled in all of these things, it is like this capacity to stay open and tender and compassionate and wise. So hopefully it lets us have like some clarity of space to discern things and make a decision, right? And specifically, there are, so anyways, I'll just pause there for a moment. And the thing that keeps us away from the equanimity is the imbalance, right? So it's like finding our balance. And in those things, like in the Buddhist practices, like my practice is Vajrayana practice. It has been for the past like 20 years. And so for me, like that's kind of the lens in which I process the world, right? And we work with the primary poisons, right? So in these traditions, like when we are out of balance, it is caused by the 5 poisons. And there's 3 primary ones, right? So anger, well, ignorance is, we say ma-ripa. That's like the biggest one. That's like the main, it is ignorance and confusion, right? So either we don't understand something correctly, or we don't understand it, or we get confused, which is human. And what I love about these practices is that it acknowledges that we're human beings. We're not these perfect little, gods like walking around, right? It's like we all have these things. These is part of human nature, and so it's like, how do we work with these things? And it's like a method and tool to understand. And so the ignorance is the first one. The second one is anger, right? And attachment. And then we have like pride, kind of out of balance pride. And then there's jealousy and envy. Right? And so those are the 5 main poisons. And then there's also 5 wisdoms. Right? So we check in, we notice what might be throwing us off balance in the moment, and then there's a way to cultivate the opposite of that. Right? So if you're jealous of somebody, you gain wisdom. You gain like all achieving wisdom, where you learn things. You learn how to do. You put your own practice in. It's like, okay, if I'm not doing something, maybe I can do something. Maybe I can learn something. It's like this self-understanding. You're developing that quality within yourself, right? If we're ignorant, feeling confused, right? There's ways to develop. Well, sure. Would you like to speak? You got to cut. Okay. You can develop how to see things clearly and rest in like the nature of things, right? So there's all of these different ways to develop the different wisdoms, and work with them. And you know, there's meditative practices for that. There's all these different ways in which to to do those things. And as far as the balance, I want to talk about started with that. And so a lot of times we talk about like equanimity, right? So anger, aversion, and attachment. I'm curious, right? Like I know for me, anger, aversion, that is my biggest one. Equanimity is something in my life that was my biggest one that I've had to cultivate, like number one. And I will, I have a couple of examples. I'm going to start, actually, I was working with a client yesterday. I work with people with trauma. So I started, you know, with yoga and meditation, and that took me into like, a lot of people would come because they needed support. And then it was like, okay, and then there's a lot of people with trauma, and how do I support these people? So it's just like this path, right? And yesterday I was working with somebody who I've been working with for like 2 years now. And this person was a student of mine from yoga for like 7 years, and it took that person a while to even come to doing this other stuff. And just yesterday we were in a session, and we've been working like for 2 years, like I said, and a lot of trauma in this person's history, early onset trauma, developmental trauma, all the things. And we've been working with boundaries, which is real fun when you're also a Buddhist yoga practitioner, because there's this sense of we're totally interconnected, and you know everything affects one another. But then you also have to understand that we're also these human bodies, which is why I love the Vajrayana Tantra practice, because it is about we are also a body. We tend to the body as much as we do to the mind, right? And so she was saying, you know, I went away and I put into practice one of these boundaries, right? It came to me. I was having a hard time, and I was like, oh wait, maybe I should try this now, right? And she said, and I said, how was that for you? She said, well, I felt for the first time I wasn't pulled into other people's stuff. And I was able to maintain my sense of self. I was able to maintain my confidence, and I was able to speak what I needed to say. And I just said to her, I said, well, maybe that's how we would describe equanimity, you know, in a Buddhist practice. I don't offer that to everybody because not everybody's open to it, but you know, you find like the skillful ways to interject it. So you don't have to be Buddhist to receive that, right, or to experience that. And so, and in that moment, it was like this way of how do we stay with ourselves. We're not losing, we're not getting pushed and pulled, but we're able to be in a place where we can see things clearly and maybe understand the next action that we might want to take, right, where it's not creating karmically like the stuff that keeps us here, and well, we're a part of some sort. It's around, like we are in it, it's around us, but how do we keep it from continuing things that maybe are not of benefit to all beings, right, that don't cause harm, that that do all of that. So I think, you know, that's one story I wanted to share that just happened yesterday, and it's a beautiful thing because it's not an easy thing to cultivate, and it's not an easy thing to, you know, to bring to mind in those moments where you can easily be like, I'm going to say something back, I'm going to be snarky, or I'm going to, you know, engage in this from that reactive place, where you can just take a moment and say, wait, I don't need to be reactive right away, but what do I do to bring myself back to here so I can then take some space and time to then have a different response, or not a response, you know, which also comes to the other part where we're not apathetic necessarily. Like equanimity isn't, I'm not going to pay attention to that over there, right? It's where's that? I don't even know who said this, but I've always loved this saying, which is, peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's how we are and how we engage with the presence of conflict. And so to me, like, that is like the equanimity. So I just want to pause there with that piece and see if anything's coming up for anybody.
Did she identify one of the 5, like anger or something like that, and then sat with it?
Working with anger.
And then chose setting a boundary was the wise path to take,
Yes.
as opposed to some other path that was induced by anger.
Yeah, the anger, and then, we can say sorrow, or going into hopelessness in a way, is also an aspect of that. Not that you shouldn't feel your sadness, not that you shouldn't feel your anger, but it's like, but there is a way in which you can engage with it, for it to be compassionate, and to open space for wisdom. Like, you can come through that in a way that maybe gives you, like, a moment of clarity. Or it says, I'm feeling angry right now. Instead of lashing out at the person, I'm going to be like, and this I'm very familiar with, right? I'm very angry right now. I'm not going to lash out. I'm going to take a moment and notice that I'm angry, because I can notice, my jaw, I can notice my heart racing, I can notice getting hot, and I know I'm really, feeling angry. But I've noticed I'm feeling angry, so what I do is I sit. And this took a long time to practice. But now I can be like, why am I angry? What is about this person, or what I think that they're doing or saying that is making me feel angry? Because I'm the one that's feeling angry. They're just being themselves, right? Or whatever. They're in their own thing. So that gives space to then go in and go, okay, I'm feeling angry because of this. All right. This actually doesn't have to do with that person. It has to do more with X, Y, and Z. Or, yeah, you know what, this person says something and it's really upsetting me right now and I feel very angry. But how can I be responsive to this in a way that is not going to create more division or harm? I can use another example. I lived here for a year, and I know we say to keep things kind of apolitical, but my life has been so impacted by politics that it's hard for me to separate all the time, like those kinds of things, right? So I was living here for a year, and then I was living right down in that casita. And at that time, there was a lot of stuff that started happening in the country of my birth, which is Iran, and I have a lot of family still there. And it was really intense, and I'm in this beautiful jungle, and I know people that live here. There's Dharma talks every Friday. And I have my practices that I'm doing down there. And all of this stuff is happening, and I'm like, why am I in the middle of the jungle? What can I do? I can't do anything. I'm going bonkers. Who am I supposed to talk to? And it was really interesting, because in that time, like, that was equanimity, and I was writing about this at that time and sending things out, because I was so enraged for so long. My heart was on fire. I just was like, and I had to do my practices, and I was like, thank goodness for this jungle. But it also was like, I could be in the most peaceful place in the world and be raging. Right? And to me, I was like, that is my mind. That is the way I am engaging with what is happening. Right? And so that was like a very deep practice for me, to do the practices that I've been taught to do, to kind of let the flames come down to like a slower cook. And then it was like, what can we do right now? And there were some things that I did do. And they were, and it ended up being something very connecting. And there was like really beautiful things that came from that, in a way that people were opened up to things they didn't know about. And so it generated a different kind of engagement that wasn't about harming people, but creating understanding and compassion. So you know, that's just a personal experience, which, and there's probably a zillion more, but I just wanted to share that one because it is really pertains to here. You know, and I remember just waking up here every day and being like, I can still take in the beauty here, I can take in the peacefulness here, and let that be something that supports, rather than something that is dividing me or making me feel like I don't belong here. You know, and to like let it hold a little bit and feel the interconnection of all of this life force around me. So I also like to share stories because I feel like that's the best way
It's good.
for me to.
This group likes stories.
Sure.
I take after my mother. It's like one thing, and I'm like, okay, stop. Like, where are we now? In the conversation. So yeah. So I just I'll take.
Can I add one? Can I add one
Absolutely,
thing?
please. Yeah.
Those of you who haven't been here, one of my focuses over the years has been how to be detached in an evolved way, which is in the terms of practice of balance. How do I not, because so many people think that detachment is disinterest, or is denial, or is repression, all of those kind of psychological terms that I know, and it's not. It is about finding the balance by which you can be involved in a productive way, rather than either self-destructive or destructive, to reactionary. And you use the word responsive, and so the first step in detachment is to become a good observer. So I've really taken that on, that I observe that I'm heated. I observe it, and I sit visually. I sit above it and watch myself in it. And I know that person, I don't want to look in the mirror. That's a mean. There's ugliness there in that anger. I need to get my anger to a productive spot, so I need to rise above it and observe. And then I also need to do that with the source, what I suppose the source of my problem is, which is often another person or a circumstance. If you become an observer, all of a sudden equanimity follows naturally. Does that fit with what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think like the practices, like the shamatha, right? Calm abiding. You're just watching your breath, letting it be, and just noticing it, observing it. And not for every single person, but 9 times out of 10, there might be some people that might have a hard time with that. But it's one way to kind of come into like this more settled place, right? In your body, soul, mind, nervous system. I try not to talk too much about nervous system because I feel like that's just a piece of what we are and who we are. But like it allows us to come into a place of that settledness, like clear, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about the water and the sand, where I remember when I was younger, this was a teaching that was always like one of the first teachings that really let me understand like the whirlwind inside, that kind of didn't allow me to connect to equanimity. And it was, if you have a glass of water and there's sand in it, and you mix it up, and it doesn't change the water is our true nature. But when there's sand mixed in and it's muddy, like it clouds our ability to see. But then if you just take enough time and you just notice your breath, that sand eventually settles. The sediment settles, and then the water is there and it's pure and you can see through it, right? And so to me that's kind of that practice. And then once you can see, then you can engage in a different way. And remove those barriers that let us see the way we are interconnected, right? The ways that we are. And it's really harder with some people, right? And I'm talking like on the not day-to-day people that I'm interacting with as much, but when it comes to like people in power, that's my personal thing where I'm just like, I have to cultivate compassion for this person. Somehow. You know? And usually what happens with me is I just try to think of them as when they were a baby. That's what I personally have to do. Because that's the only way that I'm like, at some point this person was a baby. That would, and I'm not saying that's the right or wrong way. I'm just sharing how I have to do it. Or I think of this person on their deathbed. It's interesting. Like to me, I either come to like the beginning of life or the end of life for that person. And I'm like, okay, at some point they were babies. Somebody in the life showed them a different way and they became who they are and they don't have tools. Or I think of them in their most vulnerable moment, like before death. Where I'm like, man, that must really, I wonder what's happening for them. Like they're at the end of their life and what's going through their life now. Otherwise, like that's what I have to do. Like, and, you know, and it has worked on some of the hardest people, believe it or not, a little bit. Even though like they might say something again and I'll be like, you know, or do something, right? So it's this constant practice. That's the other part. I think I wrote about equanimity a couple of weeks ago where I was like, it's a constant practice, and it's first and foremost for me to understand what knocks me off balance, and first of all to understand myself, because I am also like engaging with other people, and I have to sit with other people through their ranges of whatever it is, right? So it's something that is a daily practice for me.
A natural way to do that, and this is just what I try to practice, and I imagine other people do too, is if you're upset about something, a good idea is to just be patient and hold it in your mind until you fall asleep. And then somehow in the morning your subconscious has really worked on it, and you can have a much more equanimous second.
Equanimous. I was going to ask you how to say it.
Equanimity.
I don't know. But you can often have like withholding that angry email you were going to send, and looking at it again in the morning. It's very therapeutic. It gives you equanimity.
Yeah, the time and space, like with the somatic work that I do, with somatic experiencing, and so that is all about giving gap in time and space for people to allow room and space for something different to unfold rather than what the habituated response is. Right? Same thing. Like we get a text message, oh, this is making me, I do that. I'll be like, turn off the phone, put it over there, and just come back to it in an hour or tomorrow. You know? And also not so much, you know, like enough space for me to be able to be in a different, not in this, just this, like immediate. And I think it's harder nowadays, honestly, like with all of the technology.
The rapidness of the technology.
Because there's so much quickness to it. It's like everything is like, you must respond right away. If you don't respond right away, like, you know, there's like this underlying anxiousness, like we call it like the windiness, like the wind, like it's, yeah. So it's like, how do we find like the earth?
One of the things that I use with technology is to pay attention to a poison that I'm feeling. I will write myself an email about it, and then I will put it in my drafts, and then I'll take it out the next day. I'm like, oh, who was that? And I'll revise it, and then sometimes actually it's meant for somebody else, and I'll decide whether it goes back in the drafts again. And I have a thing in my drafts that's been there 6 months now, and it's never been right to send it. And that is a beautiful piece of trying to get trying to pay attention to what really is going on and then setting it aside. It's a really nice piece of technology that works for me.
You don't ask on Sunday.
No, yes, you sure.
You don't put the address on.
That's what you do. You
Just to
play it,
yourself.
You don't do address. Perfect.
But if it happens again, you can hit it.
Yeah,
It's already ready.
Never send it to that person, send it to yourself. It's beautiful. It's part about the balancing, though. It goes back to the changing our habits,
Yes.
our reactive habits.
Right. I actually, there's a, let me see if I can find this one. Speaking of technology.
Should I tell the story for a second? Can we find it? Yeah. I was at a retreat and there was a man there. Wouldn't get excited to see anybody. It was like you say good morning, he said good morning. Big things would happen, the toilets would get clogged and you'd go like, Carlos, the toilet's clogged. You're like, okay, I'll fix that. I was like, what's with this guy? It's a drip. And then it had this flash, this absolute flash. You are probably talking to the most equanimous person you've ever met. He doesn't get excited and he doesn't get pissed off. And the exciting thing is the other half of this that we don't really talk about, right? It's like getting super excited about things and setting ourselves up for some kind of disappointment later, or when it goes away, we'll mourn it. And I was like, he doesn't let us get excited. There's something to that. There's some restraint and balance to that as well. It's not going off the deep end on either side of things. That equanimity is for me.
But would you want to have a relationship with someone like that?
Possibly, it might be a really good balance.
Oh,
I
maybe
mean,
for you,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
having relationships, but
No.
maybe back then.
No.
But it might, Sandy, it might be exactly the kind of relationship that you might start to cultivate that feels foreign to you. That this person has something
Oh, yeah.
that feels uncomfortable, and probably that might help me.
Well, the yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's my life.
Well, I can't find it, and but it was something that one of my teachers, Dharma, shared with me, which is well, not just with me, but it was something that she shared, and it was and I can't remember the name of the Tibetan yogi who said this, but it was basically, the translation was, I don't care if you can turn fire into water. I'm more interested if you can transform one negative thought. And by and I'm not one to say negative or positive. Like, to me, like, I feel like just emotions are emotions. But, that's just my personal way of kind of moving towards things. Because to humanize our different emotions, like, they're there for reasons, right? And, like, but, like, to be able to cultivate that. And that's the other thing, too, is, like, when you said, like, being, like, going in retreat. Right? It's like we can be like super blissed out, like meditations are like, awesome, like we get to a point where it's like super blissful, and then you kind of leave retreat and you're back in like the daily life situation, and one of my teachers, like, he was saying, we also don't get attached to even the blissfulness of meditation, right? Like, we also are getting not in, because if we're in a meditation and it's feeling hard or challenging, or if we're feeling like anger, or we're feeling all the things, then we think we're not meditating. Whereas, like, really, that's what you're supposed to, like, we're understanding, and we're getting to the layers of our self and identifying those things, right? So even it's like we think that meditation is just about that blissful aspect of it, like the samadhi that might come in for like 1 second or 2 minutes or 1 minute. 5 seconds, whatever it is. But like, so that equanimity is just like in that balance of it is, we can feel a sense of consistency and acknowledging impermanence, right? I think that's the other part of it, is like, we understand things aren't always changing, and we're not grasping onto it or trying to always feel like, okay, it's consistent, it's going to be consistently like this all the time, and I think that's why these practices are daily practices, because we have to keep coming back to that. And then the more we do it, then it becomes more second nature. It becomes more a part of like it becomes less hard to be in that space or to get to that space if you need to. So I don't know what time it is. I don't know how much talk.
Do you want to open it up?
Let's open. Yeah, definitely continue.
About equanimity. Questions, thoughts?
This is related, but it's sort of a different path that could happen. Is someone could not let the anger in the first place. Sort of like anger is bad. Like this feels like what I've heard people say is like anger is a really healthy emotion, right? Assuming that like being angry is not how you act out of anger. That's two different things, right? So as an emotion, it's healthy because maybe it tells you a wise thing to do is set a boundary or something like that. But I think it's possible, and I know this because of myself, to not let the anger in at all or deny it or bypass it. And maybe, I don't know what the right word is, but it's sort of like, oh, go away. Oh, not let it in, and then not even take a chance to do something wise out of that, like set a boundary. So more psychological than Buddhism, equanimity.
That's repression.
Yeah.
Where you find a nice container to put that in so you can ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And those things. There's a purpose why it came up. And to pay attention to that, but then transform it into something productive, not destructive.
Yeah.
So it's not about denial at all. A lot of people get this wrong.
Yeah.
They really misunderstand that this is about some kind of la-la spot. It's not. It's a fully human spot.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it does the job sometimes, right? Like it does what it needs to do, but it's like there are the practices where you're transforming, right? And even like what Georgia was talking about, like when we're there's the sutra now. Like sutra is like, and I had to do that for many years because I had a lot of issues going on. So I had to really do a lot of abstaining. Don't do this, don't do that, and then I was like, okay, like I feel I got, like several years went by, and I was like, I think I can do like this other thing now, where I can be with it, and frankly, like it was so liberating to be like, yeah, you're angry. Here's a practice for being angry, and you could do the visualization for it, and you could do what you need to do and process it and transform it, so that you're not harming yourself. Your physiology with anger is intense. Like what happens to your physiology if you're always angry, right? Or if you're always lashing out at people get to be on the other side of your anger all the time, right? So, yeah, it's important to connect to it too.
Somebody else. Ready?
Well, just along the same lines to what Mom was saying.
Say it louder.
All around me, learning.
Like Thich Nhat Hanh would say, take care of your anger. Embrace it, take care of it like a baby, and acknowledge it and say, I see you anger. It's okay, I'm going to take care of it. I just love his words when he says things.
It's like appreciating the emotion, right?
I guess, and then,
Yeah.
like why is suffering noble? Because it teaches us something. So that anger is what is suffering, so it teaches something.
Anger we talk about a lot is like it's protecting something. There's something in the field that I work in is like something. It's trying to protect something. It's trying to meet something that wasn't, that was harmed at some point. So, but you have to also make sure that it's in a contained way, so that it's not just repeating the pattern, if that makes sense, right? Like the idea is to get space so that you can allow it to be there, but not in a way where it's going to be unhelpful, not beneficial to you or to another person. we're creating more harm and perpetuating that cycle, if that makes sense.
In psychology, they talk a lot about anger as a covered emotion. And it's covering up something that's even more vulnerable. Loneliness, exhaustion, disappointment, all of these sufferings. And therefore, when you sit with it, it allows you to dig. It allows you to say, you know, I was just snappy today because I've had 3 days in a row in the hot sun and I'm exhausted. Okay. Now I can understand myself and what I need to do in those circumstances. I've become wise about my anger. So psychology does add that component to it.
I was gonna mention this too. I have to find it. It's in somewhere in the 4 years of the Tibetan Buddhism. It's like there in the Vajrayana, there's like 60 types of anger. And there's like a whole list. I'll try to find it somewhere. It's so funny. Like not funny, but it's like it's interesting because it's literally like this kind of anger, that kind of anger, like from annoyance to like major, you know? So it's like really like these deep thought around anger and what that means. I'll try to find it.
We're going to do the 3 of those 5 poisons that you talked about in the month of September. So this is right on track. It leads us right into the talks in September.
So,
Other comments? Yeah, sure.
what are the teachings about this regarding, okay, so the equanimity, you feel anger, you know, the whole spectrum of emotion, but particularly anger. What's the follow-up of that? Okay, so you're learning how to internally manage it, but when you don't get that yet and you throw it out in the world, what are the teachings about what that is with regret or with how you've maybe harmed others?
I think I'm curious about
To feel the equanimity about that. Okay, this is an emotion that I felt and I expressed it or whatever. So how do I find the equanimity in the afterlife of that?
okay. So like if I understand like what you're asking is maybe I've done something or I've harmed somebody, or I've done something which I have a very deep connection to that as well. And so I feel like the self-compassion, because there's compassion. I think that word is the biggest one where to try to stay open, even to yourself, right? And I don't know if I'm getting you 100%, but it's like, you know, that if you have a certain way, like say you're angry, or you have this and you act upon it, right? That you have self-compassion around that, but you're also saying, okay, and I have these practices that I'm going to engage with because they are available to me. And if I can identify what poison is present in the moment, I can engage with this practice, so that I don't continue to repeat it. Because there's also an empowerment, right? We talk about taking all these empowerments or doing whatever. And you become empowered to understand yourself so that you are able to engage differently. But it requires a practice. So whether it's shamatha, some people need to move and get it out of, there's like movement meditations that you can do, or you don't have to be sitting still. That doesn't work for everybody, right? Like, and then depending on what kind of practice you're doing, there's very specific ones where you're visualizing and feeding your anger in a way, and like letting yourself just be, but the practices are there to kind of hold a mirror in a way, and in a compassionate way, so you're not blaming, because once we blame, if we say, oh, I did this, we either want to reject it and not take accountability for it, or we and we perpetuate it, or we don't want to look at it. So that's like aversion to, right? Which keeps us out of equanimity if we're averse to looking at ourselves. Is that what you're asking?
Something that happened recently in December. Before I share that, just to give some background on me, I am a
Speak up so that
okay, yes, sorry, my teacher voice.
Yeah.
I was saying how there's a story that this has brought up of myself, but I want to give a little background information that I'm very in tune with my emotions. I'm a very emotional person, and I've really been learning how to harness that and what practices help me so that they don't take over on either end, like really upset or really excited and happy. And as a child, when my parents divorced when I was 9, and that was like really big for me and really hard. And I was introduced to my now stepmom at that time. That was part of why my parents split. And I've been cultivating a lot of compassion for my stepmom. I think that part of her purpose with me is like I am taking away a lot and improving myself. And we've been on a very long journey. Well, through college particularly, I started getting into writing and really finding yoga and like things that really helped me, my tools, my practices, teachers. Anyway, I feel like in such a better place now around my parents' divorce, and really tried to accept my stepmom because my whole family does not accept her, and it makes me feel sorrow for my father that this is the person he's chosen, and she still like drives me crazy sometimes because of the way she communicates or the way she behaves. Just feels not like it's not coming from her highest and best, and yet I don't really know how much awareness there is of that. Well, in December, I went home to visit my family, and I just started feeling super, super triggered and frustrated by the things she was saying, and I hadn't felt that way in so long. It was like, oh, I could kind of just like set it aside or be the observer, and like that you brought that up and whatnot. However, this time my grandparents were also visiting me, and I felt almost like trapped. Like it was like I want to be here and be with my grandparents and be with my family. And this, my stepmom is like really, I'm starting to feel frustrated. So anyways, I ended up getting, she made a comment, and then I just like got super frustrated and said some things that I was feeling. And while I don't think, I feel like what I was saying was true, like I wish I had like taken a moment to calm down so that I could communicate in a way that would be received better and heard. Well, anyways, I was so upset with myself because I was like, oh my gosh, you've done so much work on this thing and you have your tools, and why didn't you do why didn't you separate yourself, and why didn't you go for a walk or take care of myself? And I understand why now, like I felt like I needed to be there, and that experience has brought such a new understanding. We were talking about emotions, and I feel like emotions are indicator of something, right? If we're like angry, like what am I angry about? What is that teaching me? What's on the other side of that? If I'm really excited about something, that means this thing is making me feel really good, and that means like, well, the opposite of that doesn't make me feel good. And so I really try to see my emotions as like, okay, what are you trying to tell me? What are these emotions showing me about myself? And so I felt so much frustration that I like wasn't calling on my tools, but now I just went back in July to see them, and I was like, okay, it was like I had a game plan. It was like, okay, if I start feeling frustrated, I'm not gonna let it fester. I'm gonna do this, this, and this. And I communicated with my dad, like, hey, I might need to take some alone time, and please don't take it personal, but I don't want that thing to happen again. And so even at that point, like so many years later, I was like, oh, I'm in such a good place, and feeling that triggering, like it ended up being so good for me actually, because I was like, okay, some of these things are still alive. What can I still work on? What is this here to teach me? And what can I do next time? So it feels like, I don't know, it feels now like I have like a plan for like at least that particular situation. and like being brave enough to like step away and be like, hey, I need to go take care of myself right now, and it doesn't need to be like a big deal for me, and I can just be like, hey, I'm gonna go for a walk and whatnot. So yeah, what you were bringing up made me think about that December moment and how like it felt really crummy in the moment, and I felt like, oh, I wish I had just like gone to bed and let everything just like calm down. But because it happened, it ended up opening all of these new thoughts for myself. So thankful for that. I feel like there's a silver lining in everything.
Good. Thank you.
It's like there's that opportunity, and I think that's where in the teachings it's like not rejecting, because there's the potential for compassion and wisdom to come up if you can not deny that like if we're witnessing our or another person's suffering, it can have the capacity to actually open us up to be heart-centered and wise in our actions and in our relations with people or beings, taking care of the plants, the animals that are here, and, like that interconnection. That we are also interconnected, and balance requires that interdependence and interconnection is part of the balance also. A main part of it. So time-wise,
how are we going for time?
it's
It's
11:03.
11:30. There's this equanimity conversation and stuff can go into so many areas. We've done a lot today about as it relates to feelings. I think that seems to be where the group was with us today. But there's so much about this, about observing yourself, so that if you work too much, if you relax too much, if you spend too much time with these kind of people, if all of those things, this is all a part of the equanimity. But so this conversation is so big and so practical. And I generally don't like to say things about the state of the world, so I'm just going to say this in a general way. The state of the world is not in balance. So if you expect it from that, you can expect to be at one end of the teeter-totter or the other. And so the job is in a world that this is foreign material and feels like it's becoming more foreign material all the time, that our job is even more important to balance ourselves out in all of the areas. It's the undercurrent that's going to make a difference in the world. I feel like the Dharma is a part of the undercurrent that's going to make a difference, and in the end, it's those rivers that will overcome the other. But it's going to take time. It's going to take our effort. I have really practiced this with my family, who are teeter-totter people. I'm not going to go into details. They love a good teeter-totter, especially if they're the heaviest one on the one end. They just love it. To throw people up in the air. And,
Slingshot.
Yeah, slingshot them off and teeter-totter. But it has been really the greatest challenge. And you were talking about that as well. The greatest challenge to stay balanced in the middle of circumstances that are imbalanced. And it does take these principles to be able to do it and to love the people that are slinging people around, and to do that it's a huge task, but it's a beautiful task. It's an enlivening task. So I just wanted to say that at the beginning or at the end here, because this is such a huge topic. We could do like 2 months on equanimity and how it applies to other areas of our life. But that was a really
It's a really nice start to the conversation. Do you want to say anything in ending?
Just ditto on that, and yeah.
And Ruthie, do you have anything to say about equanimity that you can share with us?
I have anything to say
About equanimity?
I always have something to say.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it.
Those of you, Ruthie started the group, and so we always defer to her as she's our founder. Well, the Buddha was the founder.
Well, I think when you're talking about this, I notice anger seems to be the dominant, one of the poisons that's coming up. But I think if we're looking for, so we're aware that we have negative emotions, we have things that are making life difficult. We're looking for a coping skill. I simply would recommend this simple first act that Buddha gives us in the foundations, which is mindfulness of breathing, because this takes us to non-clinging. Many times in whatever mother's love it comes to you, singing words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be. Ram Dass describes meditation as the act of meditation is to rest in loving awareness. So if we want to deal with these negative emotions, a really good simple practice is simply to breathe in, relax, breathe out, let go. Whatever it is, it's taking our mind says, bring your little anger, sit it there, breathe in, relax, breathe out, let it go. And if you do this, you begin to understand a sort of an unfolding that we start with awareness, and when we go with teachings and we understand the teachings, but then from there we realize the Buddha says, be skeptical until you've experienced it. With the experience, you finally reach a point where it's heartfelt. It comes from the heart. So ultimately, it's from the heart that you're getting free from the anger, free from the jealousy, free from the envy, whatever it is. It comes out of your heart, not your head. So you can give yourself all the lectures in the world and listen to all the teachings. If you embrace them, breathe into them, just simply. We meditate because it gives us access to our interior, as differentiated for our non-dual, spiritual. And so all I can say is relaxation is an absolutely essential part, not the kind of relaxation you're talking about, which is like taking vacations and stuff, that kind of relaxing, eating and watching TV. But the deep kind of relaxation that comes from letting go. As long as your hands are clenched, just holding on. We want to let go of anything, we want to let go of this. We need to relax. And in this you find balance. You'll find that balance that lets you release yourself. It lets go of you. You let go of it, it lets go of you. And a lot of it is like pulling small fish line apart. You get to a point where you think you can't do it. So you just throw it away. Beginner's mind, don't know mind, open mind, and never mind.
I'm gonna get a t-shirt like that.
The never mind is in Ruthie's book of wisdom.
There you go. I'm sorry, but I hope that helps.
Thank you, Ruthie.
For sure.
Just begin at the beginning and stay with it and relax and enjoy the ride. Surrender.
You want to do loving kindness?
Are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Ready?
Okay, very quickly, we have a lot of newcomers. Time is precious. This is a guided meditation rather than just your own interior meditation of loving kindness. And so we are not just resting and moving awareness, we're relaxing and letting go of meditative. Now we are taking action. And this is based on the Buddha's instruction that where you place your mind is the direction of your life. So to develop compassion, there are like 5 circles of expanding compassion and loving kindness. We're going to start with ourselves. We're closest. And we're going to go to the next circle out. That's someone we know. This is taking back to Oramae's beginning. Then we're going to go to this whole thing. Then we're going to go to a neutral person who's someone who's just there and we like them or don't like them or whatever. They don't mean much to us. They're a neutral person. Then we go to the person in conflict. And the final circle of compassion is all sentient beings everywhere. So this takes us from a very dualistic world, which is conditioned, all the way out to unconditioned. Buddhism is about friendliness. So I'm going to say a sentence or a phrase, and you repeat it to yourself silently to the person who directed you. So here we go. Make yourself comfortable. Anybody want to stretch for a moment? Take a quick pull the muscles for a bit. Yeah, it's a good idea. Close your eyes. Relax. Bring yourself to mind. See whether you want to address yourself in the first person or the third person. It's an interesting thing to think about sometimes. Seeing ourselves subjectively or objectively. But say to yourself, we'll use I, subject. May I be well. May no harm come to me. May I live with ease. That's equanimity. May I live with ease, equanimity, calm and peaceful. May I be happy. Turn your attention inwardly to someone you love deeply. Pull your look at this person, smile to them, and say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. Now we move one circle farther away in this expanding space around us. To a neutral person. Let's say it's a neighbor, someone you see every day, but you really don't know their name. But your neighbor is driving, he walks on the road, you pass him every morning, and you wave at him. And now this time when you pass him on the road, you say, what your name is. So I will address you as friend. Your friend. May you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm, and peaceful. May you be happy. Again, smile, and as they fade away in your rearview mirror, turn your attention now to next raise the rain outward. This is the rain of conflict. Bring to mind someone with whom you are in conflict. It can be a little conflict or a big conflict. It can be just something of recent irritation or a long-standing one, or a little bit of both. Yesterday, the day before, and today too, you're just driving you crazy. Okay, let it go. Breathe deeply. You have to count to 10. Your mama taught you that when you were a baby. Okay, so now take a look directly at them and say to this person, who you may not like and who does not like you either, may you do well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm, and peaceful. May you be happy. Take another breath or two. Count to 10 again. Release any tension you may have, because now we move to the big one. And for this, we place our hands over our hearts. And we're now going to embrace in our hearts, which symbolically, by the way, part of this is big enough to embrace all senses of life. 8 billion people on this planet. Who knows how many creatures and sentient beings there are in space out there? It goes on and on and on. So to this phantasmagoria of sentient beings, we say, may all beings everywhere on this plane and all other planes be well. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. May all beings everywhere be happy. Take a moment when you're ready to release your hands. And this is a very personal, self-guided meditation when we're not with someone directing us. We do it every day at home. And you do it differently sometimes. Maybe you have reasons to have compassion, loving kindness for animals, or other people who are in the hospital, family members going through hard times, whatever. But right now, as an example of that, I would like to ask Jeff to please give his version of loving kindness. When he and I first got together, he began this practice. And now you see all the trouble I brought you to. And you hearts are open, their minds are open, they are ready to experience.
All right, let's take the same 5 circles. Think about yourself. Say this to yourself. I wish you well in health. I wish you peace inside and out. I wish you honesty and integrity. I wish you happiness and love. To someone we love, same 8 ideas. Picture the person that you love. I wish you well in health. I wish you peace inside and out. I wish you honesty and integrity. I wish you happiness and love. See how easy that is to someone that we love. So let's expand that to someone who we don't know very well, a neutral person. Picture them. I wish you well in health. I wish you peace inside and out. I wish you honesty and integrity. I wish you happiness and love. Now let's go to something a little more difficult. Someone you don't like, or they don't like you. There's some kind of conflict, small or large. Picture them, look them in the eye. Same 8 ideas. I wish you well in health. I wish you peace inside and out. I wish you honesty and integrity. I wish you happiness and love. And now to the circle that encompasses all the other circles. The whole world. To all things everywhere, I wish you well and health. I wish you peace inside and out. I wish you honesty and integrity. I wish you happiness. Encouragement in all of this is to create your own version of loving kindness. Something that's meaningful and personal to you. You can use a format or a guide, and you can make your own. The importance is the loving kindness, not the form. Namaste.
Now another beautiful Friday morning in Costa Rica comes to a close. For those of you who are new, we're going to sing this little saying that I brought with me when I came from the Unitarian Church. And believing very strictly, Dharma is everywhere, everywhere. It is not restricted to any one secular pattern. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then we'll say it together. 1, 2, 3.
Go in peace. Go making peace. Living gently. Loving mightily. And bowing to the mysteries.